Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to start by offering my greetings and welcoming everyone this evening. So this morning I had the opportunity to go to a Kathina ceremony for one of the monasteries nearby. So uh, a Kathina ceremony, it's this ceremony, and especially in Thailand, it's usually the biggest event of the year at the monastery, and it's a robe offering ceremony or opportunity for offering robes. So in the monks' rules, going back to the time of the Buddha, um, they for the we have something called the rains retreat. So for monks, we still follow the calendar that was in use at the time of the Buddha. And it's the calendar, it comes from India. So instead of having 4 seasons, we actually have 3 seasons. We have a rainy season, a cold season, and a hot season. And each season lasts for 4 months. And so for the rainy season, for 3 months of the 4 months, we can either do the first 3 months or the last 3 months. But generally, most monks do the first 3 months. And Thailand is kind of a generally uh, uh, practiced for most monks to do the first 3 months. And so we have to do this rains retreat. We call it in Pali the Vasa, or in Thai, we call it the Pansa. And so for this 3 months of the rains retreat, we have to stay in one monastery or stay in one place. So we make this determination that at every dawn, we'll spend every dawn period in this one place. So in the calendar from the time of the Buddha, they count days by dawns. That's when you switch from one day to another day. So for us, we use midnight, but um, in modern times. But for the monks, we still follow the using dawn. And then there's certain exceptions where we're allowed to be away for up to 7 days. And so uh, when a certain monastery or certain place, the monks there have completed this rains retreat, have all stayed for the rains retreat, then they're able to have a robe offering ceremony or a katina. So generally through the in South Asia and Southeast Asia, the uh, the rains can be really difficult. Like the rainy season, everything gets very wet, very damp, and can be really tough on your robes. And you don't want to be making and sewing robes during the rains retreat. So this period right after the rains have ended is really suitable for making robes and robe cloth. And in the time of the Buddha, robe cloth was really expensive. It was really difficult to come across. It's not as abundant as it is now. And so what would happen would be the lay people would come together and they'd offer this robe cloth. And then we have, as the monks, we have one day to sew this into a robe for one of the monks. So we have to do it very quickly. And we'd all get together and we'd sew it, we'd dye it, and then present it to the one monk that we've chosen to have this this robe cloth. Because actually the word katina, it actually it means frame. So it's a frame for sewing a robe. Because again, back in the time of the Buddha, it wasn't we didn't have sewing machines, so all the sewing was done by hand. So basically when we'd be sewing a robe like that, it'd be like kind of like a sewing bee where you have a bunch of people sitting around the frame all working on it and sewing the robe together. And so And so we've carried this tradition on. We carry on with the calendar, even though in the West we have 4 seasons instead of three. But we still carry these traditions down with us, and they become a really beautiful tradition. And so when I was at this Katina ceremony this morning, um, I really observed some things I thought were really beautiful. So one of the first things I observed was that you have all the lay people and all these monks coming together. So they had monks from Edmonton, from Calgary, from all the different monasteries in Winnipeg, all coming together for this event, and then all the lay community of the monastery coming together for the event. And it really showed me, and I really noticed the beautiful relationship between the monks and the lay people, because the way the Buddha set it up was he wanted us to have this very symbiotic relationship that so the monks aren't allowed to just go away and never see lay people again. We're not allowed to grow our own food. All the food we eat has to be offered to us that day before we can eat it, and this is specifically so that the monks don't grow distant from the lay people. So we're completely dependent on the lay people. Um, Actually, for the rule against storing up food for monks, the monk who actually made the mistake and was the reason that this rule was enacted was actually an arhat. He was fully enlightened, but he'd just go an alms round once in a while, and then any leftover rice he had, he'd just dry it out and then save it and then just cook it up himself. And when the Buddha found out about this, he was like, no, 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 you can't do that. We go on our alms round every day. Lay people have to offer us food every day. We can't store it up. Because the Buddha didn't want us to just go off into the forest and never see people again. So we really have this really beautiful symbiotic relationship with the lay people. Lumpur Cha used to put it very well. He said, the lay people give monks food for the body, and the monks give lay people food for the heart. So this comes to one of the famous quotes of Lumpur Cha, the food for the heart. And so it was really nice to see this relationship. And one of the other things that really stuck out to me was seeing all these monks coming together, monks from different traditions. We had Lao monks, Sri Lankan monks, me, a Western monk from Thailand, and from different cities in Canada, and all coming together as friends, as fellow monks, fellow Dhamma practitioners. And it was one of the things the Buddha really emphasized was the importance of having these good friends or our spiritual friends. So the Buddha called them Kalyana-mitta, so you're good friends. And he put a really, really strong emphasis on this. So at one time, the Buddha's attendant, who was the Venerable Ananda, and he was with the Buddha, and he said to the Buddha, I think having spiritual friends, these good friendships, these Kalyana-mitta, I think this is like half of the holy life. And the Buddha said, no, 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 don't say that. Don't say that. It's not half of the holy life. It's the whole of the holy life. So coming from the Buddha, that's really high praise for having spiritual friends. And sometimes, we may wonder, well, why did the Buddha want us to have friends? I thought Buddhism was a path of practicing non-attachment, and a lot of the imagery and the things we think of when we think of monks is, monks going off to live all by themselves out in a mountain or in the forest and never seeing anybody. And there's all these teachings and emphasis on seclusion and solitude and learning to love seclusion. Why would the Buddha be emphasizing that we have spiritual friends, and to the degree of the spiritual friends are the whole of the path? Well, as far as I see it, there's really a few different reasons for this. One of them is the support they give us on our path of practice and on our training. So in the tradition of Ajahn Chah, the tradition I ordained in, it's really, really emphasized group practice, being a community, doing things together as a group. And Lumpur Biek would explain it that the reason Ajahn Chah had us do this was to support each other. So Lumpur Biek would say, some of the really old students of Lumpur Man back in the first generations of them, some of them just, they just had a natural ability to practice, natural ability to meditate. So some of them, they could just ordain and just go right out into the forest and no problem sitting 5 hours meditating without moving. And Lumpur Biek would say, yeah, but for us, it's not like that. So the reason we practice together is to support each other. And you can see it with with say something like morning meetings, group meditation. So I always tell the story is uh when I first went to Wat Pah Nanachat in Thailand, there was the abbot at the time was really pushing and encouraging practicing on our own, just being by ourselves at our little huts in the forest. And I wasn't ready for that type of practice yet. So it was very, very difficult. So the morning bell would ring at 3 o'clock and you'd wake up to practice. You'd wake up, you'd light your candle, you'd start sitting meditation, and then after a bit, your back's getting a little sore. And so I'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna lie down and rest my back for a few minutes. And then I'd just fall back to sleep and wake up in time for the morning alms round. But then we had a change of abbots, and once we had the change of abbots, he started to emphasize and go back to the Ajahn Chah style of having this group practice. And all of a sudden, the mornings became a lot easier because you're getting up, you're all coming together, all of your friends are there, all of your friends are practicing. So we're encouraging each other, we're helping lift each other up, we're helping encourage each other on. It's like you can get that you always hear it that, especially with, teenagers, usually use it for teenagers, but it can be adults as well. You hear that, oh, they were doing so well, but then they just got into the wrong group of friends. They made the wrong friends and the friends pulled them down. And this is because our friends in life have so much uh, influence over us. The idea of peer pressure and going along with the friends. So when you have good friends who are doing good things and encouraging us to do good things, it really helps us. It really helps us go in that direction and pull us along in that direction. One of the other benefits of having good friends is they can really point out to us, help to show us things that we can't see about ourselves. So these blind spots we all have. So as monks, it's actually we when we have our friends we're monks with, it's really encouraged for us to point out when we do things wrong, point out to each other when we break the rules, point out when you've got a weak spot, and this really encourages us on and helps us grow because some of these things are just so hard to see. Um, and at one time, so what can happen is sometimes people can get to the point where you can't really point stuff out to them. Like we call it unadmonishable. And so, at one point, the Buddha said, when a monk has become unadmonishable, so basically, when a monk has gotten to the point that no one could, he's either so stubborn or just reacts so poorly when people point stuff out to him that no one can point anything out anymore. And the Buddha said, when a monk gets to that point, he said it's death in the holy life because he said he's not going to be progressing anymore because he's not no one's going to point anything out to him, no one's going to show him where he's made mistakes. So it's really good when we have these friends that we trust and we know they're looking out for our own good and they're going to point these things out to us. But that being said, um, when you are trying to point something out to your friend, you've got to really you've got to really know the person and really know the circumstances and the situation. So we've all seen those people in life, those I tell it how it is people. we'll just go around and telling people stuff. And a lot of times in a really not very nice way and just unsolicited advice on things and be like, hey, you're like this, hey, you're like that, or and we don't want to be like that. That's not the idea of mutual admonishment or encouraging each other. So it's important to know the other person. Some people have certain areas they're very sensitive around and certain ways to talk to them. And even for monks, we have a lot of these rules about how to point out something to another monk. So it's really important for us to find the right time and place to do it, because if you get the time and place wrong, the whole thing can fall apart. You want to point this out to one of your friends, but you say it, maybe it's something they're sensitive about. You say it in front of a whole group of people, and it completely wrecks it. Or you say it in a at a time that they're not feeling so well, or they're in kind of a bit of a mood. So actually, for at the monastery I ordained at, we have once a week we have to stay up and practice all through the night. So we all had to stay up all night once a week meditating. So the next morning, of course, everyone's really tired, and so we actually have a rule in the monastery. It's like you don't admonish anyone the day after we've been up all night, because people get people get a little sensitive and can be a little grumpy that day. Um, and so when you do point something out, we're supposed to point out stuff that we actually seen or heard them do, not just suspicions and stuff like that. And we have to do it with um, intention to help the person, and a mind of loving kindness towards the person. And actually, for monks, we have a rule before we point something out to one of our friends, one of our spiritual friends, is we have to ask them if it's okay first. So we've got to ask, oh, is it okay if I point something out to you? Because again, sometimes you know you don't know where they're at, you don't know what kind of mood they're in, you don't know what's going on in their life. So you may say, just go and point something out, but they've had a really rough day. They found out their brother was in a car accident or something like that. So it's important to ask first, oh, is it okay if I point something out to you? And they might be like, yeah, maybe not right now, maybe we can talk later. Or it's, yeah, great, now's a great time to talk. So having our spiritual friends, they can uh encourage us like this and point things out to us. And we can always be learning from them, and as well. So one of the things is we can also, having stuff like Dhamma discussions, sitting around and chatting about Dhamma, because sometimes, the teachings of the Buddha, they're vast, the suttas are vast, and we all kind of have our own experience. We've heard these teachings from this teacher or that teacher, or maybe we've read these suttas and not those suttas, or maybe we just have a bit of a different interpretation on some of these teachings. And so having these Dhamma discussions with our friends, they can help us see something we didn't see before, or think about it in an angle we didn't think about it before. Or sometimes even it just encourages us to practice more. And so like there's some monks I'm friends with, and there's some I just love having Dhamma discussions with. You talk about practice and everything, and even though it's not really much new information, it's just you're left really inspired. And at the end of it, you're like, yeah, I just really want to go do some walking meditation or some sitting meditation now. And it just lifts you up and brightens you up and inspires you to practice. And so yeah, these were just a few of the reflections I've had today after going to this Kathina ceremony. So I would like to offer that as a bit of a reflection for everyone this evening.